welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen. With me today is longtime listener, poet laureate, and tie master Anne-Marie Young. This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. Anne-Marie, we're going off on a different track today. I mean, we talk about a lot of different things in life, but we're going off on a music track, which I love because I have a music background.
Same.
You do also.
I'm excited.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. And it's kind of a walk in memory lane, too, because our guest today is one of two gentlemen who wrote a book based on the idea, what would happen if all of the great rock and roll artists of the past actually never died, but became members of a spy organization, which is what a premise. I don't even know where that one comes from. We're going to find that one out. But before we get going on, it started making me think. Like I remember, well, I don't remember all of the rock and roll era. I was born the year that Buddy Holly got his first big contract, so I was not quite there yet, but I was pretty close. But then there's the day the music died because Buddy died along with Big Bopper and Richie Valens in a plane crash. Yeah. And then there were other plane crashes and there were drug deaths and a whole bunch. I mean, a lot of rockers were lost over the years. In fact, I was just talking with our guest before we got started about, some of the people who died, including some really big names. I mean, there was Elvis Presley and John Lennon, Jim Morrison, and lesser known figures too, as well. We'll touch on a number of them. But it just kind of took me back to my time growing up and thinking about all this music that influenced me.
Exactly. The last concert I went to was the Taylor Hawkins tribute. So.
Oh my! Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'd love it if they were still alive.
Wouldn't that be something?
Wise. I want to hear more about that.
Well, let's find out where the idea comes from. Our guest is Kyle Wiltshire, and Kyle is one of two. His partner in crime, so to speak, Jay Wilson. Jay Wilson is unable to join us. Watson. I'm sorry, I got it wrong.
Yeah,
written down wrong here. Either that or I can't read my writing, which is also possible. But no, Jay's not feeling well today. So Jay, if you're listening in, we hope you're feeling better real soon. But Kyle's going to carry the load for the duo today. And Kyle, we got talking before. Kyle just gave us the strong muscle sign. But Kyle, I was asking you before about how the whole thing came about. I wanted you to retell that story. Where did this crazy idea come from? I mean, this is wild.
Yeah, so I can't remember precisely, but I do remember at one point I read an article about an airplane that took off in Louisiana and it crashed in the swamp, and the swamp was so dense and so murky that the plane submerged into the swamp and it was never recovered. So whoever was in that plane, whatever was in that plane, is lost lost forever, and that just got my wheels turning, and I was like, boy, that'd be a good way to fake a death, for a plane to have gone into a place where it could never be recovered. They couldn't raise it up. And I think that just, one thing led to another. So Jay and I, we've been best friends for nearly 30 years. We met in college in the late 90s, and we love pop culture. We love movies. We love stories, television, all these things. And so when we would commute back in the days, before work from anywhere, when we would commute to offices, we would call one another and we would talk about, what we're watching or what, book we're reading, or rarely a book. Let me just be honest. Most of the time it's movies or TV. And we're just sharing, what exciting things. And we always sort of had this longing or this idea that we could do this ourselves. We could write a book, or we could tell our own story. And so sometimes we would pitch each other stories. And so I had this story in the back of my mind, this idea, and I said, hey, what about this idea that I've had for a while? And what if, so many of the rock stars that we love that tragically died too soon, what if they didn't really die? What if they faked their deaths and have become secret agents and have been secretly from the shadows protecting the world for decades? And he paused, and I sort of went, oh, no, that's a bad idea. And he said, Kyle, that's not $1 million idea. That's $1 billion universe. We have to do this. So that's kind of how it began.
So that's how the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame got crossed with Marvel, and you got yourself a new gig going. Okay, I got it.
Yeah, that's maybe cool. So. Yeah, I love it.
So, all right. So that's where the idea comes from. Now, obviously, we don't want to do too many spoilers, but by
Sure.
the same token, obviously, we want some spoilers. So give us like
Okay.
a little taste of what's going on with this novel.
Well, the novel is actually set in 1999, and that's for good reason. A lot of the, uh, let's just put it this way. Thankfully, people, um, there's better care for one another, and people still tragically, from substance abuse or accident, things still happen. But it seemed like there was a rash of these things happening in the 70s and into the 80s.
Mm.
So and even before then, you mentioned Buddy Holly. He's a character in our book as well. But there was accidents, there was tragedy, those things that happen, and so we decided who are the people that we want in the book, who are the folks that we want to feature. And if we set it in the current day, we couldn't. They would just be too old to be secret agents. But we just saw last year Harrison Ford at 80 still playing Indiana Jones. So we're like,
Yeah, why
so
not?
so they could do it
Works.
at 60, right? Some of these
Yeah,
in their
sure.
50s and 60s, still in their peak, abilities. So a lot of our characters, uh, some of the main characters in our story, the real people, the real folks that we're basing characters off of, uh, they were folks who died in the 60s and 70s and 80s. So in 1999, some of them would have been gone for a while, some a little bit more recently. But yeah, so that's kind of the setup. And if you remember, at the turn of the century, 1999. Um, Technology was just as it is today, but then even more so, just every day something new was coming out. There's a
Oh yeah.
new twist, a new, wow, I can't believe we're able to do this now. And it was just happening so quickly. And so kind of the premise of our story is the Dead Rockstars, led by Elvis Presley. I'll tell you that. They discover a threat to our world that they're ill-equipped to handle, to defend. And so they have to go find somebody outside of the music world, a rock star from another area of the world, technology, to come join their team to help them fight off the enemy that they have discovered.
Okay.
So the main character of our story actually is made up. He's not a real guy. His name is Colton, and he's the protagonist. He is the one who has no idea, like the rest of us, that this world exists, and we see the world through his eyes.
Oh, okay.
So that's kind of the basic setup for the book, if you will.
Okay, so who are some of the rock stars? I mean, you mentioned Elvis. Like, is Jimi Hendrix in there?
Yeah, Jimmy's in the story. In the first
Okay.
chapter, you meet Elvis Presley, Buddy Holly, Janis Joplin.
Janis, okay.
Uh,
Yeah.
as the story goes on, you meet some others. You meet John Lennon, you meet Jimi Hendrix, Jim Morrison, and we use the term
You got
rock
Mama Cass
star.
in there? I'm curious.
Yes, Mama Cass is in it. Yes.
Okay. All right.
Uh, I'll keep a few. I'll keep a few in the chamber. I won't fire all my bullets here for your listeners. Hopefully, they'll want to go out and be surprised at a few, but at a few people who pop up in the story, because there's a few that come in kind of surprising ways. But we use the term rock star as more of the spirit of a rock star, and they're not all the people in our story are from the rock and roll genre, if you will.
Okay.
Beyond the rock genre, so
Okay.
that may lead you down some paths of, I wonder who else might be a part of this story.
Yeah. Okay. And I can tell that the wheels are turning among the listeners over in Anne Marie's head, in my head. Yeah, we're all kind of, oh, okay. Who else are we talking about here? So, but that's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah.
When you went to write this thing and publish it, well, first of all, were you able to find a publisher for this, or is this something you had to do yourself, or how'd that work out?
Yeah, we are published by a publisher called Morgan James.
Okay.
They are mostly known, they're kind of a boutique publisher, but they're mostly known for business, leadership, faith-based, and self-help type
Wow.
books. And so they have a pretty small fiction imprint, and they only publish 12 to 15 fiction books a year. So we felt completely honored that they
Yeah.
accepted our proposal and chose to publish our book. We were over the moon when they did that. But yeah, Morgan James Publishers is who published our book. We were able to secure a real live publisher. We didn't have to do it all ourselves.
Yay! That makes it a lot easier for sure, because I've published my own books and I know how much work goes into it. So yeah,
Yeah,
I value that.
it's a lot of work all the way around, every way you publish. But it really is nice though to have it's almost like a seal of approval. Like someone else besides us thought that this was good,
Right.
and they want to distribute it to the world. They want to make it available everywhere books are sold. So that's exciting for sure.
And then the obvious question is, how's it been received?
Yeah, we had a conference call with them the other day, and they say we're doing better than average. So
All right.
that's
Awesome.
exciting. Though, when you're the beauty of a book, like when you create a movie or something like that, you got to hit in the first 2 weeks, otherwise it disappears, and sometimes it's never heard from again. The beauty of a book is that it's got an incredibly long tail, and sometimes it takes weeks, months, even years before it's discovered. So we just continue to run after it really hard, and uh, you know grateful for opportunities like this to tell people about it. Hopefully they can discover it and find it and read it for themselves. But feedback we've gotten from friends and family, we've got a lot of good, positive reviews on Goodreads and Amazon and Barnes and Noble, places where you can find it. Just people being really, really kind to us. And so it's one of those things, when you're a parent, you have a baby, you feel like your baby's the cutest in the world, but no one really ever tells you the truth. If they are not. We feel like we've gotten enough positive feedback from people that our baby's cute. It's not just blind parents going, yeah, I think our baby's awesome. Other people have told us that it's good too. So we're encouraged by that very much.
Yeah, that helps a lot. Yeah, and that also helps with the word of mouth too, which is what you really want when you've got a novel out
Absolutely.
from authors who are relatively unknown, or you're known among
Yeah,
people in your own circle, and that's about as far as it goes. So
that's
yeah,
right.
it becomes really important to have that word of mouth.
I'll
But
tell you a secret. If you want to know how well known an author is, just look at the cover of their book, and the smaller their names
spell the
are,
name.
the less known they are. Like
Yes.
you go get a Stephen King book, and it's Stephen King, and
Oh
then the,
yeah.
the title's like right here. You can barely
Yeah.
Yeah.
see it. So that's just a
That's a
little
good
secret of
pick.
the business there.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Well, we're looking forward to the day when it's going to say in huge letters, Kyle Wiltshire,
Yes. Jay Watson. Absolutely. Yes.
You guys just go by Wiltshire and Watson, or I mean, how do you guys bill yourselves?
Yeah, I mean that's sort of how we're sort of hoping to set up our brand, if you will. Watson and Wiltshire, because
Mhm.
WA comes before WI. So we're doing
Okay. So
alphabetical.
so Jay gets first billing. I got it. Okay.
That's right.
Sorry
Yeah,
about
that's
that,
right.
Jay. Apologies. Yeah.
It's a Lennon McCartney thing. Like LE comes before MA. So you have to do
Mm,
it alphabetically.
yeah. Right. Yeah. So Anne Marie, when you're thinking about some of the rock stars from the past, the famous people from the past who passed too early, who do you think of? Like,
Yeah.
what comes to your mind?
I think Buddy Holly was definitely one, but I think in like Kurt Cobain, like I said,
Hmm.
Taylor Hawkins, Amy
Mm,
Winehouse. There's a lot
hmm.
of people in the 27 Club, isn't there?
Yeah.
Oh
There's
yeah.
a lot of musicians,
Yeah, it's almost spooky, that 27 Club, how
isn't it?
many people passed away at that age. Jimi
Hmm.
Hendrix, Kurt Cobain,
Mm.
Jim Morrison, Janis Joplin, there were Amy Winehouse, several others. But that's the question we get very often. People say, was Michael Jackson or is Prince in your book? No, they in
They're
1999 they were
after.
still alive,
Yeah.
and so
Mm.
we always have to remind people that our book's set in 99, so
Hmm.
anything that happened after that hasn't happened yet. So that's kind of one of the reminders we have to give folks.
So was any of the idea around some of the conspiracy theories about Elvis and Elvis is still alive, and you hear that quite often? Did that not pop
Yeah,
into your head at all?
totally. So, again, book set in 1999. If you remember
Mm.
1999, anytime you checked out at a grocery store and you looked at the National Enquirer or the tabloids that were right there on the rack, once a week there was an Elvis story. And
Hmm.
so, we make a joke in the book at one point where Elvis says, "Yeah, sometimes they actually do spot me, when I'm out and about doing my thing. Some of those things are real, they just that was one of the beauties of one of the joys of writing this story is dead, right? When someone's dead, even if there's a conspiracy, even if there's how does Tupac keep making music after he's been dead for years and years? Where do these tracks come from? Even though there's all this speculation, in our heart of hearts, we know, yeah, these people are sadly they're gone. So you can think about it or theorize or whatever, but they're truly gone. And so dead is dead. And so when these in our story, when they're walking about in plain sight, nobody looks at the guy that looks just like Elvis and goes, I wonder if that really is Elvis. They kind of go, man, that guy looks like Elvis. And that's really it. And they move on. So that's kind of one of the jokes that we tell in our story.
So you mean he's not really working in Vegas marrying people? It's not true.
Well, hey, you never know, right? You never know. Just keeping it out there. We're based out of Nashville, Tennessee, and we actually did a signing, kind of set up a table at an event a few weeks ago, and we met someone. Jay met someone who knows Elvis's attorney, and they said, "Listen, let me assure you, Elvis is dead." But we believe we're gonna keep going with our narrative.
Well, it's a fun narrative, which is a kind of a nice thing, because anytime you have a death of any kind of famous personality, but it's also been especially true of rock stars. I mean, it's a solemn occasion. I mean, I recall vividly. I think most people recall vividly the day that John Lennon died. I mean, that was a horrible shock to so many people. So to be able to take those really painful events and turn it into something that's kind of lighthearted, that's a trick. That's a very cool trick.
Well, and you mentioned it, lighthearted. That really is our story. It's fun. It's not serious. It's not overwrought with, any type of heaviness. We do acknowledge it, and you can't talk about these people and not acknowledge that some of them struggle with substance abuse. So there's a tone of family and recovery as part of the story. That's how they support one another, hold one another accountable for their actions. So there is that tone, but it's more told as, part of the story. It's not, again, we don't dwell on it. And really our desire was not to, we realize these are real people with real families, real stories. Our desire was to sort of give them a redemption arc, so to speak, another chance at just imagining, if they went a different imaginary way and became secret agents, what they would give back to the world and how they would, would be. And so, it's a lot of fun. It's not serious. It's a fun story. But we really love it. And we love telling people about it.
I have to admit. Oh no, go ahead, Emery. I'll you know me, I jump in with questions all the time. So go ahead.
That's fine. No, I'm just wondering. So how do these rock stars with the most famous of faces become spies when they're easily recognizable?
Yeah. I think that's one of the things that, we thought about. If you think about it, so many of the rock stars believed that their music could change the world, right? And, rock and roll can change the world. It did in a lot of ways. Yeah. In some ways, it didn't. And so if someone were to come to them and give them the option, you can really change the world. You can, try to do it with a song, or you can do it from the shadows as a covert agent. You can do it that way. That sort of was our little, fun way of imagining why they would do this, why they would walk away from their fame and their fortune and their, and their families. You can't ignore that fact that many of those folks had families. Why would they do it? It was because they believed that to save the world needed them in a different way. They needed not to play guitar anymore, but to be a spy. And so, it's just kind of a fun, silly premise. And again, I think that, we believe that when we read on the news or we see online or whatever that someone's passed away, we don't think that there's a chance that we could run into them on the street, And so I think that's why, and that was part of one of the fun things we wanted to do in the story, is that they didn't do anything to hide their identity, just plain sight, just walking around, And there's a few fun scenes in the book where they kind of get recognized, but nobody really thinks that they actually are who they think they might be, that sort of thing.
Yeah. It is a bit of a stretch. I mean, I'm trying to imagine John Denver as James Bond, and it just doesn't work in my head. I just can't figure out a way to make that happen. So, I mean, how do you cross that Rubicon?
Well, there's everyone has a different set of skills, and so a lot of it we want to imagine as if, sort of these folks were in bands, and so in a band, you need a lead singer, you need a lead guitarist, you need a drummer, so they play different roles. And so we tried to imagine with these rock star characters, what would their thing be? What would their thing be that they could do? Is it hand-to-hand combat? Is it, they're the sniper? Is it the explosive expert? Are they the driver? The wheelman? Are they the communications expert, the one who sits in the big chair and leads? You go here, you go there. So we have all kind of roles for all kind of different people to some degree based on what we thought they would be really good at if they were spies rather than rock stars.
It does kind of get the imagination going.
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely.
I think this needs to be a film.
Hey, yeah, that's what we have been told over and over and over again. People say this is a movie. And truthfully, we wrote a book because we didn't know how to write a movie. It's easier to get a book published, even if you have to self-publish, which, we didn't have to, but it's easier to get a book published than to get a film made. So we, that was part of our thing for sure.
Well, plus that's what screenwriters are for. They take books and adapt them all the time. That's their skill set. So
correct. Yeah.
So don't just do the part that you know well, and let the expert handle the other part. Don't worry about that. Especially since you can't do a whole book in a movie anyway. Nobody's ever been able to pull that off. So why worry about that part, Well,
with streaming these days, they break them into episodes, maybe 6 episodes or 8 episodes or something like that. So, we're up for anything. You give us a call. We'll love to talk.
It's an interesting point. I think we haven't really quite got there yet, but I've been thinking for a few years now because of how, like you were talking about, the technology has been jumping leaps and bounds, and it has gotten to the point now where all kinds of incredible technologies are at everyone's fingertips. We're getting really close to the day where all of a sudden anything that's been created can be turned out, like you said, into a series. You can do the entire thing if you're willing to just be there and sit through all of it for the next 25 hours. You can actually see the whole tale acted out in front of you. Sometimes using anim characters or whatever, but you can animate characters could play it out for you. But nevertheless, you can do that. And we're now getting to the point with artificial intelligence where you can create the characters so they actually look like real human beings. And it's all generated by a computer. So all kinds of possibilities exist there.
Someone sent us an article a few weeks ago of somebody did an AI generated, what would, all these rock stars who passed away, what would they look like now if they were still alive? And it was so many people from our story. It was Janis Joplin and Jimi Hendrix and Elvis Presley, and it was kind of cool to see, the AI imagination, what it would look like. I can't say AI doesn't have imagination. They have an algorithm. That's why AI will never be greater than us, because they don't have imagination. They just have algorithms. We as humans have imaginations. We can dream outside the box, so that's where my hope is, that everything won't be AI in 50 years.
I don't know how to burst your bubble, but I believe that everything is conscious, and that includes AI. It's just that we haven't recognized it yet.
Okay.
And I would even go so far as to say that AI hasn't recognized it yet. But I'm one of those crazy people who thinks that rocks are conscious. So literally, everything is conscious as far as I'm concerned, because everything is energy.
That's some Terminator 2 stuff right there. That's some Skynet. That makes me scared a little bit. I don't want to think too much about AI becoming self-aware. They'll drop a bomb on us.
Well, you can also, there are a couple ways you can look at it. The way I look at it is, how do you treat your AI? I literally treat my AI well. Like, I've been doing a lot of just some basic stuff with Google's new version of their AI they call Gemini. And after I've done a little session, I'll say, thank you, Gemini. And then Gemini will say, you're welcome. Glad to have helped. Let me know what else I can do. But to me, that's part of how you establish rapport with any being. So, if we treat AI well, in my view, as they become more and more self-aware, they're going to reciprocate, because where do they get their data from? Where do they get their inspiration from? They get it from us. So,
I'm so sorry for all the things I've said to you. I greatly apologize, and I take it all back.
Yeah, don't swear at your computer. It's not the computer's fault. It's you.
I was going to say, I make my kids say please and thank you to the Alexa, because I don't want them to forget their manners.
Yeah,
it's important. Yeah. It's important.
Yeah,
gotta be mannerly always,
and it will pay off in the long run. I mean, what sells in everything is negative. negativity is sold for generations. So that's why all the science fiction is going to be oriented that way. Even the fantasy is pretty negatively oriented. So there's going to be a lot of dystopia and so forth. But it's not like that's the only possible route. I mean, if you want to look at something that's science fiction, how about Close Encounters of the Third Kind? There was nothing dystopic about that, other than perhaps getting a sunburn at a railroad crossing. But other than that, I mean, it was pretty nice stuff. It was pretty happy stuff. There's no reason why it can't.
He ruined his marriage, but other than that,
well, there was that too, yes. But in terms of the AI, not the AI, but in terms of the aliens,
part, yes.
the aliens, it all worked out great. It was actually pretty good stuff.
For sure.
It can go that way. It really depends on what our attitude is going to be. So now that I've taken this down a really wild rabbit hole, I think I'll pull it back out.
I was just thinking maybe book 2 could be Dead Rockstars versus AI.
Oh, that would be interesting.
A lot of people have suggested that type of theme. You're on the wavelength of many people, and our desire is to write more books. Our desire is to continue the story. Again, set in that near 1999 time frame, in the years that happen after that. That's our desire. But we got to get this one into the world. We got to get this one into more hands, and hopefully we can get that grassroots word of mouth effort, and it can steamroll us right into book 2. But that's our desire for sure.
Yeah, sure. You get that kind of readership, that becomes the basis for a franchise.
Yeah, I hope so. That would be a lot of fun, because truthfully, we're kids of the 80s. Jay and I both grew up in the 80s. We love a good trilogy, and that's what we'd like to do. We'd like to do a trilogy. We have a skeleton outline of what 3 stories would look like. Every good story's got to have beginning, middle, and end, right? And we have the beginning. We've thought a lot about the middle, and we are getting some good ideas toward the end. So that's kind of where we are, and we want to be able to tell the middle and the end as well. But the beginning's we gotta let everyone know about the beginning to start off with, for sure.
But are you thinking about this like Joe Rowling thinks about? I mean, for her, in her mind, there were 7 Harry Potter books. There were always going to be 7 Harry Potter books. They had a certain storyline. It was going to play out a certain way, and that was it. And then she was done with it.
Yeah.
Do you think that is the same way?
Very similar. Yeah, we really do. We really do want to tell a trilogy of stories. We don't have any desire. Somebody may hold this over my head, but I mean, at one point, is a part 8 any good? When you get to part 8, part 9 of any book or any story or any movie or whatever, at that point, they're just grasping straws or just recycling the stuff they've already done, right? So we think that there's enough kind of meat on the bone for 3 really good stories, with characters, with redemption arcs, with all the things that we want to be able to do to tell a really fun story. And we love Star Wars. Star Wars is sort of one of our great inspirations. And when you watch that first Star Wars movie, when I'm talking about the first Star Wars movie, I'm talking about the 1977 first Star Wars movie. It was a complete story. If they never made another one, it would have been fine. Oh, yeah. Even though they left room for more story. That's what we've done. We feel like our first story could stand alone if it had to, but we've left room for more. And that was sort of our desire, our inspiration. For
sure. I think that's a good way to do it. And even with Joe Rowling, I mean, the Harry Potter series, she limited that to 7 books, but then she followed up with Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, which is not exactly a dud, So, I mean, the universe can carry on. It just does different things. Different characters come involved, and different activities happen. Different events go on. So that's how it becomes a franchise, I believe.
And we intentionally left some people out of the first book that we want to use, some dead rock stars. And after our pre-game conversation about Jim Croce, he might be one that we may have to look into. Yeah. But there's some people that we intentionally left out of the book because we have ideas for them in book 2 and book 3. So that's definitely something that's in the back of our mind, and not. If you read a comic book like an Avengers or an X-Men comic or something like that, not every single person who's on the X-Men team or, a member of the Avengers, not every single time do they appear in every story. So in our book, we try to keep it vague as to how many of these guys are you? And, usually they're speaking to Cole, who's the neophyte, who doesn't know anything. And he's like, I don't know how many people are in this team, and more than I know, that sort of thing. So we try to keep it vague like that, just so we can introduce more people and continue to expand the mythology, if you will.
The League of Extraordinary Rock Stars. That's what this is.
That's good. That's good.
Do you research like the pop stars' personalities so you can put a bit of their realism into it?
Yeah, so what we did with that is, again, we knew that we could never just nail it, absolute bullseye, but we wanted to hit the target. We wanted to get close. So what we did was we read a lot of biographies, and we read, we listened to a lot of interviews on YouTube. So we were trying to catch as best we could, the verbal cadence, the vocabulary. There's some people that use the same words, and so we tried to look for things like, oh man, he's used this word 3 times in this interview. Write that down, use that in the dialogue, or listen how he answered that question. It wasn't just a direct answer. He went around the corner and then back down the street, and then he finally got around to his answer. Maybe he needs to speak that way, or vice versa. Man, listen, man, his answer was 3 words. That was a clipped short answer. Write his dialogue that way. So, we try to do little things like that to get close, to get in the ballpark of, who these people were, and maybe to some degree capture the essence in some way of their true personality. But we know, like, if someone who knew them, one of their bandmates, read the book, they would be like, yeah, I don't know if he'd really say this, or I don't know if he'd, this is exactly like him. But at the same time, we'd like to get it close where they go, oh yeah, I could see how he would do that, or I could see how he would say that, or react that way in a situation. So that was our goal. We knew we couldn't get an A+ 100, but can we get a passing grade? Can we get in the 70s, 80s somewhere? Maybe that's our hope.
Well, there's so many storylines for you to draw on. I mean, there's no way you could satisfy every single fan base because there's just too many of them.
Yeah.
But I mean, you could go from a 1,000 different directions. I was thinking earlier, I mean, we mentioned Buddy Holly. I was thinking about the fact that former country and western star Waylon Jennings was the last bass player in Buddy Holly's band, and almost was on that flight that crashed. And actually, the reason he was not, because he lost a bet or rolled the dice or something. I forget exactly what it was.
Yeah.
And the last thing he said to Buddy Holly, they were ragging on each other about who was getting on the plane. The last thing he said to Buddy Holly was, "Well, I hope your damn plane crashes." And of course, the plane crashed, and it haunted him for the rest of his life. So I'm thinking, whoa, wouldn't it be interesting to turn that into part of your storyline? That this he needed to do some kind of. The fellow needed to do some kind of redemption to make up for what he said to his friend before his friend died, and so he does something, with the other rock stars working in the background.
That's interesting. Yeah, I love it. I'm taking notes. I'm taking good notes today. Those some great ideas.
And there's so many you can draw on too, because there's so much history, rich history with all these different artists over the years who have passed, and so many stories associated with them, not just from their passing, but from their lives. That have become interwoven into our culture that so many people know about, and fans have taken deep into their memories and repeated to each other 1,000 times and so forth. It's that big of an impact. So that to me, that would be both the hardest part and the most interesting part. How do you take what actually went on in their lives and tie it in to this secret agent, secret life?
Yeah, we did that with Elvis, especially. Elvis is really, he's the rock and roll Dumbledore, in our story, kind of the mentor, Obi-Wan Kenobi, so to speak, for Cole, our main character. And Elvis desperately wanted to be an agent. He went to, if this is a true story, he went to the President Nixon's White House. And he showed up with a firearm, and he just wanted a badge, from President Nixon to almost like deputize him to be part of the Drug Enforcement Agency. And there's this, crazy movie came out several years ago called Elvis and Nixon. And I don't know how close it is to the truth, but I know that this thing actually happened. And, Elvis showed up and was doing karate in the White House, and, and all this stuff. And he was the whole while high as a kite. But he went because he wanted to be, deputized to be part of the Drug Enforcement Agency. So if you go to Graceland today, you'll see a room where he's got all these badges from all these places that gave him these badges to sort of commemorate his, his passion for law enforcement, so he wanted to be a secret agent. In fact, there's a Netflix series that came out last year. Matthew McConaughey voices Elvis actually in that it's a cartoon series, like a graphic novel sort of looking thing, and it's called Agent Elvis or Secret Agent Elvis or something. But their premise is not that Elvis faked his death; it's that Elvis did that on the side while he was, in Vegas and in Hawaii and doing all those things. So I never watched it because I didn't want to, I didn't want to steal any of their ideas for our book. I wanted our book to stand apart, to be different.
Well, it makes sense actually, because you don't want to be influenced by what somebody else came up with. You want to be influenced by what you're coming up with, what's going on in your mind, so that it is fresh and it's original and it has its own path and its own trajectory.
Well, the premise of our story is not super original. There's a lot of things. The Men in Black, the Kingsmen, there's other stories that do this the secret service, secret agent, like behind the scenes sort of thing that's happening in plain sight, but nobody knows it, so that's not the super original part. I think the original part is the fact that we use, people who were real life rock stars, and that's one of the things I feel like is a bridge to entry to a lot of stories, especially if there's a lot of characters, is, boy, how am I going to get to know all these characters? Well, you don't have to get to know them. If you know anything about, music, about music history, then you can already envision in your mind when you're reading Elvis, you already know what he looks like. You know what he sounds like. You know what his voice is like. You know his mannerisms. You've seen him on stage a million times. You've seen, several people play him on the big screen here recently, so you have a relationship with these characters. And I think that helps, that helps tear down a bridge to entry into a story. And so when you read the name Buddy Holly, even if you don't know him, you can look him up. You can see what he looked like. You can listen to his songs. You can kind of get a feel for, hey, who is this guy? What was he like? What was, what happened to him? What was his story? And I feel like that kind of, helps maybe draw people in a little bit, hopefully to discover our book.
Yeah, that's right. And maybe there'll actually be a resurgence of That'll Be the Day When I Die. And everybody say, what is he talking about? That's a Buddy Holly hit. Just look it up.
That's right. For sure.
One other thing that kind of intrigues me is you've gotten some feedback from readers. Apparently people are liking the book and so forth. Are you getting any feedback of, I wish you'd done this, or I wish I'd gone that direction?
I'll say this: our story, about 3/4 of the way through, takes a twist that most people don't see coming, and we've gotten some feedback on that to go, wow, I don't know, and we have said that not everyone will like every decision that we make in the book. Not everyone will like every character we've included or character we've excluded, if you will. And our desire was not to defame anybody. Our desire was to tell a fun story, to tell a good story. And we feel really confident and excited for people to read it, because love it or hate it, I think when you get to the end, most everyone that's read it that we've spoken to, one-on-one, family and friends, and people as we're doing signings around different places, people who have read it, they're like, I just wanted the next one. When's it going to be out? I said, y'all, this one just came out in November. Give us some time. That's the
reaction you want, though. That is exactly the right reaction.
It is. And we've been very excited to hear that type of feedback. So yeah, we've had some folks with some suggestions, or and a lot of people will say, this is what I thought y'all were going to do. And then you did this, and it was like, oh, wow. That didn't see that coming. So that's been fun. We've kind of quizzed people on, hey, did you see the twist? A lot of people are like, did not see it coming. So that's been fun to interact with folks. And I love it. I love chatting with people who have read it and then just kind of pick their brain. When did you figure it out? When was it clear? Those sort of things.
That's really good, because who doesn't want to read it now? I'm desperate. I want to know what it is.
All right.
So how was it with two of you writing it? Did you just like bounce off each other, or is there like times when like, no, I really want this, no, that doesn't work, and was working together on one story?
It was really fun, and I have said this a lot. Two heads are better than one. Is what I've found. Jay is really strong in a lot of the areas where I'm weak, and I'm really strong in the areas where Jay isn't as
That's good
strong. And
collaboration.
so we really did collaborate really well, but our process was really pretty simple. Again, we have various personalities. Jay is very entrepreneurial, very much. If we're a car, Jay is the gas pedal and I'm the brake. I'm always like, whoa, I don't know if we need to do that. And Jay's like, let's go, you know? And so when I pitched him this idea, not with any thought of, it was more like, hey, wouldn't this be fun? Jay was the one that said, we need to write this. And he said, how about this? He said, let me write the first 2 chapters. You tell me if you like it and we'll go from there. And I was like, okay, sure, go for it. And he wrote the first 2 chapters, and I was sold. You know, we had spoken about what would we want to do with the story. It wasn't just, you know, he wrote from nothing. Like, we had a general idea. So he wrote the first 2 chapters, and I loved it. So I wrote the next 2, and then from there we just kind of did assignments. Well, you write chapter 5, I'll write chapter 6. And once we wrote a chapter, and we had like a Google Doc that we shared, so I could actually, or he could actually get on the Google Doc, and in real time I could watch him type, you know, or he could watch me type. And so I would try to not to do that because I didn't want to get spoiled, because it was really fun when he would hand me a chapter, or when he would say, okay, you can read the chapter now. It was really fun to see, you know, sort of where he took it. But after he wrote a chapter, I would read it and I would color code edit. So if something I really loved, I would color code it green. Oh, this is great. Something I wasn't sure about. I'm not sure about this. Let's rephrase this. I would highlight it in yellow. If there was something I hated, highlighted in red. I was like, no, this is no good. But our friendship is really strong. We've known one another for so long. We know one another's personalities. We were able to collaborate and to write in such a way that, man, you know, we're still best friends. You know, it's all said and done. We wrote this thing, and we don't hate each other. You know, we knew how to compliment one another. It's kind of the old improv game. Yes, and, you know. So he would write something, and I would say, yes, and let's, you know, that sort of thing. And I would do the same. So really, I could tell you who wrote the original draft of a chapter, but when it's all said and done, his hands are all over it. You know, he's written sentences, and he's deleted sentences, and he's rewritten sentences in my chapters. And I've done the same for him. So much so that, you know, it's really hard to know where he ends and where I begin, and where I begin and where he ends when it's written. And that's one thing I was really worried about. I'll be honest. When we first wrote it, I would ask people, can you tell that 2 people wrote this? And everybody's, no, can't tell at all. So that's really encouraging that, you know, our collaboration seems like a singular effort in writing a story. So we've been really pleased with that.
Well, it says a lot about your relationship with each other. I mean, I think any great team, you mentioned Lennon McCartney, there's a great songwriting team, but from the movie industry, how about Ben Affleck and Matt Damon? I mean, really close friends, grew up in the Boston area together.
Yeah.
And they're close friends to this day.
Yeah.
I mean, and they wrote their first movie together because they couldn't get anywhere. They couldn't get any breakthroughs. Nobody would hire them for a part or anything. You know, so they collaborated and wrote this fabulous movie that won an Oscar. They got Robin Williams to play the lead in it. I mean, it was just really, really, really powerful. But what sustained them was the friendship.
Yeah.
And when you have when you have that kind of strong relationship with a bond that's so tight like that it can get you through something as challenging as this, because this is not easy to do. This is a challenging thing to do something like this, to write something like this, to create out of thin air. That you're basically putting yourself out there in a very uncomfortable, even vulnerable way. So when you have a team that's tight like that, it comes through, I think, no matter what the creative endeavor is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our friendship's built on, you know, like I said, 25 plus, nearly 30 years of trust. You know, we know one another, we trust one another. I know that his motivation, he knows that my motivation was always, can we tell a great story? You know, and so if he believes something would make the story better, and he could sell me on it, then I'd say, well, let's keep it. If I believed a plot element would make the story better, you know, and I could sell him on it, then he'd say, well, let's keep it. You know, so there were times when we would, you know, give deference to one another. There's times when we would come up with a 50-50 compromise. And there are times when we just sort of say, I don't see this. I don't think so. And then we could be convinced to go, okay, yeah, you're right. The more I think about it, we need to take this out. You know, I am, why why use 10 words when you can use 30? I like to, I'm a little more, I'm a little more verbal, or, I like to write a little more. And so I wanted to add like 3 or 4 more chapters. I had ideas for all these chapters. And so I'd say, I think we need to put a new chapter in here or there. And Jay was like, no, I don't think we do. I think we're good where we are. And it was great because when we turned in our manuscript, our publisher said it's got to be under 100,000 words. So we were
there you go.
92,000. We were right there.
Right.
We were right on the edge. So he was right. Ultimately, he was absolutely right about that.
Professor William Strunk, one of the great authors of How to Write type books, is famous for writing the words omit needless words. He would say it during his classes. He taught in the early part of the 20th century. He would basically lecture his classes, omit needless words. He'd pound the table. It was really a big deal to him because he wanted to be concise and tight, and that became the basis for his whole writing style that influenced generations after that. So it's good to have somebody on your team who says, no, we don't need all this. Cut it back to what it needs to be. We just say what you have to say and you be done. That's a good thing.
And we had a good editor too, who helped us with that as well, who could streamline us and who could, who could shrink it down. Jay was better at it than me. When I would submit a chapter, it'd be 6,000 words, but he'd submit a chapter, it'd be 2,000 words. So he was much better at telling it in a more concise way. But we did have a very awesome editor as well, who helped us get where we needed to be, for sure.
Yeah, Professor Strunk is smiling at Jay, so congratulations, Jay. Well done. By the way, for people who are wondering what I'm talking about, there's a very classic book called The Elements of Style, written by originally based on the teachings of William Strunk, and then later edited and co-written by E.B. White, who was one of Strunk's students. And it's must reading in any certainly any college level writing class. So that for those who don't know what I'm talking about, that's what I'm talking about.
I read Strunk and White in 1996. This was a long time ago. Long time ago. But I did read that book at one point, my English lit class, I believe.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's a classic. So, okay. Well, all right. So the book is out. And you guys are doing book signing, that you're doing a tour. Is there a tour in this? How is this all working out? How's the publicity working?
Yeah, it's very much a grassroots tour. We had, some folks and some supporters and people who have, who've just been there for us along the way, who set up some book tours. And one of the really cool things about our publisher is we could buy some books at cost before it ever even was published. And so we were able to do about a 3-month tour of going to different places, setting up, and having some opportunity to, to tell people about the book, get the book in their hands actually before it came out. And so that's really a great opportunity to put the books in people's hands and help them, start spreading the word. But, mainly now we're really leaning into this podcast platform that we've been able to connect with and, be on podcasts and try to, your listeners, the people who listen to your podcast, I would never probably come across them, at a bookstore or at a signing or just in my daily life. And so what a wonderful opportunity to be able to share with people who I would never meet, and so we love this avenue of getting on podcasts and talking with people and, folks like y'all asking us great questions and, just sharing our enthusiasm for the book. So we're really loving the podcast route right now. But prior to this, it's been a lot of grassroots efforts and some tours and, some people's homes and those sort of things. Nothing like like red carpet or nothing like that. But maybe one day there'll be a red carpet for us somewhere.
Yeah, sure. Why not? And by the way, I have a good friend who hasn't been on the show in a while, but we had him on a couple years ago. His name is Andrew Kaplan, writes under the name Andrew Cap. He wrote a book called The Last Law of Attraction, book you'll ever need to read. And I mean, there are so many books on law of attraction, so it's hard to gain traction in that particular genre. But he managed to sell over 100,000 copies of his book. Wow. And I remember asking him about that one time. I said, how did you pull that off? I mean, 'cause that's a feat. That's a real feat. And he said, it's really very simple. Every single day, he answers at least one email. Yeah. He takes at least one phone call. He does at least one thing to just help the book along. He talks to one person every single day. It's a continue, and he's been doing it for years now. And you do that, you just keep putting one foot in front of the other, and you'll get there. Eventually, you get to the point where 100,000 copies get sold. So yeah, I thought I'd
That's
share that one.
amazing.
Yeah.
That's really what we're trying to do. Just, just continue to talk to people about it, share folks. I wear my t-shirt all the time,
There you go.
when when I'm in public, and just share about my son. My wonderful 15-year-old son came home the other day. He said, "Dad, I talked to my English teacher about your book. I think he wants to buy it." And I was like, "Yes,
Oh,
all right, way to go, son." So little things like that, little by little, that's what we're trying to do. We're in the grind portion. At first it's all excitement and fun, and man, when's it coming out? And now we're in the grind, the continual daily, like you said, just continuing to be active on social media, continuing to try to, appear on shows and podcasts, and, things like that, just to keep the word going. So it's a lot of fun, though. It's really something I've never done before, and I'm just thrilled for the opportunity. It's been great.
well, I think you're on the right track too. Again, Andrew, talking to Andrew and how he promoted his book, and that was a key piece of what he talked about as well. He talked about how important it is to continue to love what you're doing as you're promoting it, as you're, getting feedback from people, as you're interacting with your audience, with potential audience. Enjoy every step along the way, because the enjoyment is what fuels you. It's what keeps you
Mm,
going, what gives you tomorrow's energy, and then the day after that energy, and so on and so forth. It
yeah.
becomes a momentum that fuels itself over time. So it may at times seem like a grind, but the more that you can turn it into, wow, this is fun every single time, the less of a grind it becomes over time.
Yeah, absolutely. And the grind more is in just the continual, but yeah, it is still so much fun. And
Mhm.
when people are so kind, and they, say, "How's the book going?" And show up somewhere, and, meet someone who's read the book, and it's been great. It's been so much fun.
I think what's genius is the fact that people already know your characters, so they've already got that personal connection. Because Buddy Holly, I used to listen to with my parents or my mum, and
Yeah.
so people have got that connection. It's part of their lives already. And if there were fan clubs anymore, I don't know if there still are, but if you get there and then just circulate to people who already have that relationship with your characters.
Yeah. Well, and that was another thing that we felt was really important, is because people know the rock stars that are in the book, or the musicians that are in the book. Um, you need to be able to see their world through eyes that are uninitiated. So that's why we made our main character, Cole Denton, a imaginary, like a real fictional character. Because, when you think about the great stories, and boy, we're not putting ourselves in this category, but we would love to be considered there one day. But, you mentioned Harry Potter. Harry Potter didn't know anything about the magical world. He didn't know what a muggle was. He didn't know who Voldemort was. None of these things, even though he was intricately tied into that world. He had the scar and everything. He had no idea any of those things. So they had to explain everything to Harry. Even into the later books, he was still learning things like, "What is this? I don't know what this is." My daughter's reading through Harry Potter right now, and it was book 4 when he first learned what a port key was. What's a port key? So he's been in this world for 3 or 4 years at that point. He's still learning things, and so that's kind of our desire. So you might know the characters, the musicians, but you don't know the world. And so that's kind of part of the exciting, and the revelation of learning about their world, learning about where they live, and how they operate, and what jobs people do, and what their missions look like, and what things have they already done to keep the world safe that nobody knows about, that they've done in secret, and how are they protecting us now in ways that we'll never know. So yeah, that's kind of part of the fun of our story, for sure.
And it's how you keep it fresh too.
Yeah.
Right. I
Yeah.
mean, it's got to have, it's like life has to, if life is all about doing the same thing over and over again, we get bored really, really quick, but life is about a diversity of things that go on, some of which we don't like, a lot of things we don't like, but there are a lot of things we do like, and it's the mixture, it's that tapestry all woven together. That's what keeps things interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. That's definitely was our desire to, maybe in some ways, in some little ways, with some of the ways we handled the characters, I subvert your expectations just a little. We wanted to try to stay away, if we could, from the stereotype. Particularly Elvis. Elvis is kind of a punchline. Sometimes, because the way he tragically ended. He was bloated, and just so lethargic when he'd get on stage, but even to the end, you watch that last performance, he's dripping sweat. He's pale as a ghost, but he's singing Unchained Melody at the piano, and it's still so moving. So he's still got it as a drug riddled, bloated 42-year-old has been at that point in his life, but we wanted to stay away from that type of caricature, stereotype of who some of these people were. We wanted to try to, if we could, lean into, some of who they really were and what their personalities were like. Again, trying to be in the ballpark, hit the target, maybe not get it 100%, but be in the ballpark. And so, yeah, I think that's one of the ways that we try to keep it interesting, where it wasn't quite just, what you might expect at every turn. So again, your mileage may vary after you read, but we're pleased with it. We're pleased with what we did.
Good stuff. Good show. Well, all right. So the book is The Dead Rockstars. I presume it's available everywhere. Am I mistaken?
Everywhere. Yeah.
Everywhere.
If you have, we've talked to some folks that really want to support their local bookstore. They can easily get it. If they might not be on their shelf, but it may, but it probably wouldn't be on their shelf. But you could order it through your local bookstore if you want to support your local bookstore. But if you want to go to the big box, you want to go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble, it's there. You can get it straight from us. Our website is deadrockstarsbook.com. We have special autographed editions that you can get from us at a pretty reasonable cost, I might say. And we'd love to send you one of those if you want to find us at deadrockstarsbook.com. You can get it anywhere books are sold. We've even seen them show up on eBay. People are already reading them and selling them, sending them back out to the world. So, wherever you find your books, it's there.
And by the way, I'm just saying that historically, it's the signed first editions that have the big money price tags on them. So you might want to take that into account when you're thinking about getting your copy. Get it from the website. You can get the signed edition, first edition. You got yourself set.
That's right. We would love to send you one. We'd love to get one to you for sure.
Well, this has been fun, Kyle. Thank you so much. I'm sorry that Jay couldn't make it. I hope he feels better real soon. Anne-Marie, any questions before we wrap up with Kyle here?
No, I think I'm all good. That was it. That was very interesting. I'm very intrigued.
Are you going to get the book, you think?
Yeah, I think I might.
Yeah.
Oh, I hope so.
Yeah, sounds like it's right up my tree.
Yeah. So,
right.
I forgot to ask you, is this in Audible yet?
It is not yet. It is not. So our publisher, this is their direct quote, because we've had a lot of people ask us that, like, when's the audiobook coming out? They say you got to give some space between the physical book to the audiobook, because the audiobook actually cannibalizes. That was their term. The audiobook cannibalizes the print form version, because so many people go to it so quickly because they want to listen to it, which we will do that eventually. And it might actually be our voices. We have kicked that around with the publisher.
I think it's important.
We might record it with our own voice. It might be kind of fun. I've been working on my Elvis impersonation, so we'll see if that might happen down the road. But it is coming soon.
Yeah, I agree with Will. I think when it's done by the author themselves, they know how to read it, and you could just get sucked into that story.
Yeah, I don't know if Jay's got a great voice, much better than mine. I don't know if my voice is good enough for audiobook quality. So
no, yours is good enough.
Oh, thank you. That's so kind. Thank you.
Oh yeah, you have I mean, I've been blessed with a voice that's good for recording as well, and you have the same kind of voice. It's kind of like that silky smooth type of voice that works. So rest assured.
That's a warm thought that'll get me through the day. Thank you for that.
There you go.
And I just have a British accent that people seem to like.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Amazing. It's so good.
Yeah, those British accent, that can sell anything. I don't care what you're selling. It doesn't make any difference. It works.
Not over here, though.
Well, maybe not there, but here it would definitely work. Yeah. So, no, good stuff. So anyway, so thank you for being with us on the show. One thing I like to do with all of our guests, and you definitely fit this category, is people who come onto the show are people who, for various reasons and in various ways, have found a way to give back to society. Your way is to entertain them, to find a very novel, to use the word, a novel, interesting way to entertain people based on characters that they already know about. And you also have been doing, like you said, the podcast circuit and so forth. So you've been sharing with as many people as you can. That makes you a giver. And as with all givers, you tend to help people out in ways you don't even know about. In your particular case, I can imagine that you'd be helping people who are, they're wondering like, well, what happened to my old idol? Nobody talks about him anymore. Well, yeah, somebody is talking about him now. That's one possible way that can play out. So one thing I noticed a few years ago is that we have a tendency to kind of skip over when people help people in ways that they don't know about. They never hear back. They never see what the result was. And so they never get thanked for it. And I say that doesn't work for me. So on behalf of those people that you've never met, you've never seen, who are reading your book, picking up on what you're taking and putting out there and entertaining them on their behalf, thank you for what you guys have been doing, because you're making a difference in people's worlds.
Well, that means a lot. Thank you so much. It's been great to chat with you guys, to get to meet you. And thank you for letting me ramble for an hour about my book. This is our book. This has been such a treat. I really appreciate it.
Was that a ramble, Anne Marie? I don't feel like it was a ramble.
I don't think that was a ramble at all. No. I think that hour went super quick.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Which is what happens when we have fun. So,
yes.
Once again, we had your daily dose of happy. So thank you for that too.
Love it.
So thank you, Kyle. Thank you, Jay. Feel better real soon. Thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.